Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jadley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so delighted and so honored that you are joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Reyna Marder Gentin. She is here to celebrate her middle grade novel, My Name Is Layla. Before we invite Reyna into the studio, we want to invite you to visit our website. If you are a parent, an educator, caregiver of any kind, you definitely want to go to our website and sign up for our free newsletter. Find out what's coming to the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Find out what you may have missed and download all the wonderful, wonderful information that we'll have there for you. If you are the author of a fantastic children's book, you also want to visit our website. You want to sign up for our newsletter. You also want to check out our Certified Great Read program. This is a program that has helped lots of authors, especially indie and self-published authors. Marla Humer, she is the author of The Big Move. She recently wrote, the Certified Great Read program provides the recognition that independent authors deserve. I have been pleased with the process and enjoyed receiving the professional animated video announcements Jed and his team created. Using the video and podcast on my social media network has made an increased interest amongst readers. The Certified Great Read seal of approval shows readers that my book is an award-winning book and guaranteed great read. The Certified Great Read program receives my stamp of approval. Like I said, that was a recent email from Marla Humer. Check it out for yourself. Go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, click on the author's click here button, and scroll on down to Certified Great Reads. Join us right now from right outside of New York City. Our guest is here to celebrate her brand new middle grade novel called My Name Is Layla. Please welcome to the show, Reyna Marder Gentin. Reyna, welcome to the Reading with Your Kids podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm really excited to have you here. Tell us about Layla. Who is this star of your book?
So Layla's a 13-year-old girl with undiagnosed dyslexia. And at the beginning of the novel, she's getting ready to start 8th grade. She's kind of dreading it because she's a very conscientious student and a good kid, but she doesn't do well in school and she hates disappointing her mom. She's growing up in a complicated household. Her father abandoned her mom and Layla and her brother when she was small, and her mom is working night shifts as an emergency room nurse to keep the family afloat. So there's a lot going on in her house. And when she gets to school this year, when she starts out, she's got a new English teacher, somebody that's new to the school, who doesn't have any preconceived notions about her and about her capabilities, and he sees her potential. And it kind of scares the bejeebus out of her. And she's challenged, and she starts to rise to the challenge, and then she makes some poor choices that she has to rebound from. But it's a hopeful book, and it's, I think an inspiring story. And, that's who Layla is.
Yeah. You know, boy, as you're telling us about the book, I'm thinking, number one, being a 13-year-old girl is hard enough. It's a real challenge. Being a 13-year-old boy is hard, but boys, and I don't mean to stereotype, but for lots of boys are kind of knuckleheads, and they kind of, bang their way through life, and they're able to get through it. Girls, and again, not to stereotype, girls are different, and they're built differently, and psychologically, and that age, that middle school grades, is so challenging for them. Add on to that dyslexia, and undiagnosed, and unacknowledged, and unsupported, and then on top of that, being abandoned by your dad. I'm wondering, in your mind, what's the biggest challenge for Layla? Is it the fact that her dad left her, as you said, abandoned her and her family, the learning difficulty, or just being 13?
Yeah, she has a lot of challenges, as you say, and some of them kind of get worked on in the book. She, of course, I think, as many kids do, has this kind of fantasy about her parents getting back together, and she, the dad comes back to town at some point, and she tries to orchestrate a Thanksgiving with the family, and the mom's having no part of it. But she does kind of reach out to him, and in turn, I don't want to give away everything, but by the end, he acknowledges that he's had some learning differences as well. And, dyslexia has a huge genetic component, and, perhaps had she known that about her father, that would have been helpful to her earlier. But, she does kind of get this information towards the end of the book, and it does make a big difference in both her diagnosis and the support that she receives, and also in feeling, in a strange way, close to somebody that hasn't been part of her life. They've shared this difficulty, and that turns out to be very meaningful for her. So, she does have a lot on her plate, and that's part of sorting things out. And she has good friends. She has a boy that she has a little crush on. There's a little slight romance in the book. So, I don't know what I would say her biggest challenge is. In some ways, the learning difference perhaps is her biggest challenge, because once she starts to get that sorted out, other things are going to fall into place, right? School's going to fall into place, and her self-esteem is going to fall into place. And, so I think that really probably is the biggest challenge, but she does have a lot of family things going on at the same time.
It's interesting. If we had had this conversation, almost 100 years ago, when I was just leaving college and getting into social work, and I heard you describing this 13-year-old girl who had been abandoned, but really wanted to kind of pull her dad back together. But, my mind would have said, well, that's ridiculous. This kid would hate her dad. I mean, and he deserves to be hated. He left them. And how could she have any love or feeling for him at all? But the reality is that that's exactly what most kids in that situation would want. Just, I know this person abandoned me, but I'm holding out hope that they really love me and care about me.
Right. I mean, I think part of it is she was very small when it happened. Her brother in the book, who's a little bit older, about 4 or 5 years older than she is, he has a different view. Like when the dad shows up for the attempted Thanksgiving, there's no way this boy is talking to that dad. He marches right back up to his bedroom. So, I think kids, of course, react in all different ways, and he maybe has a little more of a memory of his father, or he's been more exposed to the mom's feeling about the dad or whatever. But kids have all different reactions to things. And that's part of the book too, is just seeing, even her reaction to how much the mom has to work. She feels badly, Layla. She wants her mom around more. And her brother says to her, listen, she's keeping food on the table. She's keeping this roof over our heads. And, you need to be happy with that and grateful for that, and not moaning that she's not home to make us dinner the night before the first day of school. But you know what? That's what Layla thinks. Layla thinks families are supposed to be a little different. And she looks out the window and she sees the family across the street, and they're a little different. They have dinner together every night, and they have, she says, you can tell their clothes smell like fresh meadows just by looking at them through the window. Like, she idealizes them, certainly, but she has a point. Her family is a little different. And, part of this book is about kind of recognizing that everybody has differences and everybody has issues, and, having a little kindness and empathy goes a long way.
Yeah. One of the things you said in describing the book is that she has a new teacher, and the new teacher doesn't know Layla, and so the new teacher doesn't have any preconceived notions. The teacher isn't thinking, well, this kid is unmotivated and doesn't do the work and isn't going to be able to learn, and that scares Layla. Can you expand on that a little bit?
I think she kind of has gotten used to people not expecting much of her. There's a scene in the beginning of the book where she's getting ready for the first day of school the night before, and she, how kids lay out their clothes for the first night of school. That's a big deal. And she's looking through her T-shirts, and, she's looking at things with big slogans across the chest. And the mom says to her, maybe you should just wear something plain and pretty and let people make their own, judgments about you. And she says, well, in her mind, she doesn't say it out loud to her mom because she's embarrassed, but she knows what they're putting on those t-shirts, right? They're putting on daydreamer, and they're putting on unmotivated, and they're putting on lazy. And she doesn't want any of that. So she picks some Guns N' Roses t-shirt. She doesn't even know their music, but she's like, whatever, as long as it's not, leaving myself open to how these teachers are going to view me. And, the teacher, Mr. McCarthy, he takes a different view. He recognizes that maybe there's something there. And she has an assignment early on. They're reading The Outsiders, and the teacher asks them to write a couple paragraphs about some time when they felt they were an outsider. And she goes home and she tries to do it, and she's being earnest, whatever, but nothing's coming out on the page because she has a real trouble with both the reading and the writing. So it comes out as just big gibberish, and she hits send with rows and rows of letters, just not even making any words. And the teacher hands it back to her the next day, and he says, look, I didn't know whether this was an inspired commentary that an outsider feels that they're outside of all sensible communication. The language isn't even the same. He's like, I was going to give you an A. And then I thought maybe it's just, bugger you, Mr. McCarthy. I'm not dealing with you. This is none of your business, when I felt like an outsider, and I was going to give you an F. So he averaged them and gives her a C. And she, but she's moved by it in some way. Like, she sees that he recognizes, like, maybe she really was making a comment. She may not have even have realized, subconsciously that she was making a comment about all this stuff, but, she is an outsider, and the language doesn't work for her. And, so I think she's frightened because she wants to succeed so badly, and she really feels her own potential. And when someone else recognizes that in you, it can be scary, right? Mm-hmm. Because now you have to live up to something. Mm-hmm. Now somebody's seeing that there's more there.
Yeah.
So.
You're absolutely right. And it's not just 13-year-old girls or boys. All of us kind of get into these patterns where, we want something, we can't quite get it, and then we feel comfortable with the dream. The dream is enough. Until all of a sudden it's like, something changes and I might be able to do this. And that's scary, because if I really try for it and I fail, then I fail. But if I just have the dream, I can always hold on to the dream.
Right. It's safe.
Yeah.
It's safe.
Was there a Mr. McCarthy in your life?
I would say I had a lot of great teachers that definitely believed in me, who wanted me to succeed. I had a high school science teacher who was way ahead of her time, feeling that girls needed to be really involved in science. And I remember she was my chemistry teacher, and I wasn't particularly good at chemistry, but I remember one summer she said, you're going to go to a college science program for the summer because that's good for you. And I went, and I didn't end up pursuing science. I'm a lawyer by training, but I think that it was important that someone recognized that I could do something that I didn't recognize I could do. And, I think I had a lot of great teachers like that. I grew up in a very good public school system, and, I hope people, this is what kids need. They mm-hmm. need teachers to recognize that there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah. And I love that image of the teacher coming in and just having a clean slate, because it's, my beautiful wife has been a teacher for over 33 years, and I know she starts every year trying to have as open a mind as possible, but it's really difficult when you are in a school and the student is coming up from first to second grade, and you've already heard the stories and you saw what happened last year, and I want it to be different. I want to give this kid the benefit of the doubt. I want to help this kid be successful, but it's those memories and those words in the back of your mind.
And also siblings sometimes, mm-hmm. right? Like Nick, her older brother, is a very good student mm-hmm. and an easygoing student. And I'm sure, for Layla, following in those footsteps is hard, because mm-hmm. the teachers are, even if it's not conscious, they're expecting you to be the same student that your sibling is. And, lots of times that's just not the case.
Yeah. I'm wondering, where did Layla come from? Who was the inspiration for Layla?
So it's kind of a strange story. I was actually taking a workshop at a writing institute near my home on writing for youth. I didn't really have any story in mind when I went in there. One of my classmates, who was a friend from another class, actually has dyslexia. And that was kind of initially the spark for it. But it was a great experience. I took this workshop for 2 semesters and I had pages due each week. And so I basically wrote a chapter each week. And by the end of the year, it was, pretty decent draft. So that's kind of where it came from. It's nothing terribly deep. I don't have real experience with dyslexia. I've learned quite a bit about it since. And I had to do research to make sure, because I wanted it to be, relatable and accurate and what kids go through. Layla talks in the book about she prefers to watch the movies of books that she is assigned because she can follow that a lot better than the reading, and sometimes that gets her into trouble. Sometimes the movie adaptation is not the same as the book, so there's a scene where she takes a test and there's a question about the ending, and the ending was different in the movie than it was, and so it's not so good. But she has trouble reading out loud, which is something else that dyslexic people often have. All sorts of things that I didn't know before I started researching, but I wanted to make it as accurate as I could.
Yeah. The idea that there are kids, and it's a reality, there are kids that are undiagnosed, have different learning challenges. And it's really frustrating, and it kind of makes sense because, the old saying is a squeaky wheel gets the oil. And if you're just a student and you're going in and you're trying hard and you're not causing trouble, it's real easy for teachers who are incredibly overworked to sit down and say, all right, well, Layla's doing the best she can. We'll give her a C, kind of, let her go through, and no big deal. And because I got to deal with Johnny over here. Johnny, oh my goodness, he's going to tear the class up.
Right.
It would be wonderful. And I think while it would be very expensive to start, I think in the long term, it would save a lot of money if we just, when a child starts school, just sit down and go, all right, there's something unique about this child. So let's do some tests and find out what it is. Let's not wait until there's a problem. Let's just be proactive and see how this child learns best and try to give that child the support they need to be the best they can.
That's a great idea. I don't know how you do it with the volume of of children that you have out there, but it's certainly, you hope that teachers are attuned to things, that they are vigilant. I mean, I think what you were saying earlier about the boys versus girls, boys are diagnosed more with dyslexia, and it's not because there's more boys with dyslexia. It's because the boys misbehave, and that acting out is what gets them noticed. And actually, in the book, the bad choices that Layla makes are the ones that eventually get her noticed. And she, in that way, she acts more like a boy at some point. And, and thank God she does, because now that's what gets her the help.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I had some people, note that maybe it's not as realistic now as it was maybe 20 or 30 years ago, that somebody would go to get to the point of being 13 and not be diagnosed. But I think that's actually not right.
Absolutely. I agree with you. I think that there are lots of kids out there who have learning difficulties that are not being acknowledged, that are not being diagnosed, and mainly for the reason that we said, is that they're in school and they're not causing trouble and they're getting by, and hey, the kid's getting a C. C passes, while that kid could get an A, or that the kid could succeed on a higher level. I'm wondering what kind of conversations. I know that most kids are going to read Layla. My Name Is Layla on their own, independently. But I think that this would be a great book for a family to read together, maybe co-read and talk about over the dinner, at the dinner table. What kind of conversations do you think families could have as they were experiencing My Name Is Layla together?
I think there's a couple big points I hope that they would, address. First is she could have gotten help so much earlier if she had been able to ask for support. And I don't know how kids do that. I really don't. But there's got to be a way, and there's got to be a way for parents and teachers to be receptive and open to that, so that, when a kid does feel like they're having difficulty, she knew she was having problems. Like, she says in the book, my brain doesn't work the same way other people's brains work. She's not oblivious to it, but seeking out support in a productive and, reasonable way, as opposed to the way she ends up with her cry for help is certainly key. And I think the other, big thing that I would hope, and I hope this book gets read not just by kids with learning differences in their families, because it's really a book for everybody. And the big point of it is that everybody has something, right? There's always, you don't know what's going on behind closed doors. You don't know who's suffering with a chronically ill parent, or with a financial problem, or with a mental illness. I mean, there's everything out there, and everybody has something. This idea of the perfect family, and the kids that are all doing great, and the parents are all doing great, hopefully for some amount of time in everybody's life, that's the case. But there's always something. And, that's the big point that I hope people take away from it. I mean, she kind of idealizes, as I said, this family across the street, who is also the boy that she likes. And it turns out that he's got an executive functioning disorder. I don't know if that's not really disorder, whatever, an issue. So he's totally disorganized. He can't keep his locker straight. He can't write down assignments. He gets help, and he's completely comfortable with it. And, she finds out when she goes for her help, and there he is. He's in the learning center. He's in the resource center. He loves it there. He loves the woman that runs it, Mrs. Hirsch. She's the greatest. And, he's comfortable in his own skin because he's been getting help all the time, and nobody made a big stigma out of it. And, and she's shocked because he's in the perfect family. He's in the family that has dinner together every night at 6:30. How could he have a problem? But you know what? Everybody has a problem. And, I think that's the kind of thing I hope parents would, discuss with their children when reading the book.
Yeah, absolutely. That whole idea that we are connected, that we are family, that we share so much, we are all different, but I guess the one thing that we all share is the fact that none of us are perfect, right, and we all need each other.
For sure.
Yeah. I have to ask, cause, you mentioned that you are a lawyer in your day gig, as they say. How do these two worlds come together, or do they? Are they completely separate, or does My Name Is Layla kind of wiggle her way into your law practice?
So I'm not really practicing now. I did practice for a couple decades. And I would say it made its way into the writing. My first book was a romantic legal thriller. It came out in 2018. So definitely it made its way in there. It was very similar to the work that I did. I worked as a criminal appellate attorney in a public defender's office. So that was, I know it's like a do-gooder job. I know it's painful, but yeah, so that made its way in there. And I actually have another book coming out in October, which is about a family court judge. So I actually practiced in family court for a while as well. So definitely it comes in how I approach my writing. I wouldn't say it made much of an impact on Layla, but yeah.
Wow. A public defender. My hat is off. If I had a hat, I would take it off to you. Talk about, we talked about how difficult a teaching job is. Public defender is, I would say, right up there with one of the most challenging and necessary jobs in our society. So thank you so much for doing that.
Of course. It was actually, I practiced as an appellate attorney, so it was still extremely challenging. It was a little less down and dirty than you're imagining, because I wasn't actually, mixing it up with the clientele too much. But the issues, were all there, and it was, Yeah, it was very challenging and very rewarding.
Yeah. Well, tell everybody where they can go to find out more about My Name Is Layla and find out about that romantic courtroom drama you mentioned.
Yeah, I wish you would. So you can certainly go to my website. It's just reynamardergentin.com. And the books are all on Amazon, and you can ask for the books at any bookstore. They'll order it for you. But Amazon is always the easiest.
Yes, we love supporting those small and independent bookshops, especially now. And no offense, I love Amazon, the friendly Amazon drivers. It's never the same. They're out in front of the house every other day at least. So,
right.
So Amazon has enough of my money. I think we can support.
For sure.
We can support our small and independent shops.
For sure.
And
if you go on bookshop.org, they will direct you to an indie bookstore that has the books. So.
Absolutely. This is great. Well, we've had a great time speaking with the author of My Name Is Layla, a really powerful middle grade novel that I believe will spark lots of great conversations with your family, and really, I think, really help kids develop that sense of empathy that we hope all kids are able to develop. And we've been speaking with the author, Reyna Marder Gentin. Reyna, thanks so much for being part of our show.
Thank you for having me.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. It's another doubleheader Saturday. 2 great authors coming your way. Monica McGuy and Liam Jenkins will be our guests. We hope to see you there. Hey, if you're the author of a fantastic children's book, be sure to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the Authors Click Here link at the top of the page. Find out how you can be a guest and also find out about our great Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read program. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our guest, Reyna Marder Gentin. Be sure to check out My Name Is Layla. Also want to thank my team, Alejandra Doherty, Fatima Khan, Justina Thompson, Helen Fraser. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.